Good afternoon and most welcome to 1409. I will today finish off the last of my summary of The Master and His Emissary. And we are in the last fourth of the book and entering into the interesting realm of Julian Jaynes and his famous book, The Bicameral Mind. Julian Jaynes and the Origin of Consciousness. Putting it at its simplest, where Jaynes interprets the voices of the gods as being due to the disconcerting effects of the opening of a door between the hemispheres, so that the voices could for the first time be heard. I see them as being due to the closing of the door, so that the voices of intuition now appear distant, other, familiar but alien. Wise but uncanny, in a word, divine. Language and paradox. The point is not that the nature of things is contradictory, but that the attempt to render them in language leads inevitably to what we call paradox, and the attempt to avoid paradox therefore distorts. Language makes the uncommon common. It can never create experience of something we do not know. Only release something in us that is already here. The logos can be seen as something shared, reciprocal, perhaps even reciprocally coming into being, rather than as how we tend to see it, something achieved through private, isolated thought processes. And he emphasizes that things change their nature depending on context. Seawater, for example, is life-giving to fish, deadly poisons to humans. It is in the drama we find our echo. The very fact of having a philosophy at all was one of the many changes to be brought about by the advent of necessary distance. Drama, at least as conceived by the Greeks, is another, and as Nietzsche saw it, a demonstration of the necessary balance of Apollo and Dionysus. This distance has nothing to do with the ironizing distance or Verfremdungseffekt, espoused by modern dramatists, and indeed works to the opposite end. It enables us to feel powerfully with and thus to know ourselves in others and others in ourselves. Man must listen to an echo of himself before he wise to deny that all is change and motion. Yet despite this, Parmenides then may hear or know himself, as Snell says, and it is in the drama that we find that echo. The mind understanding its own nature. The tragedy of Prometheus is a tale of two hemispheres. And in more general terms, the Greek invention or discovery of tragedy, based as it is on the ever recurrent theme of downfall through hubris, represents the paradox of self-consciousness, the beginnings of the mind coming to know and understand its own nature. The left hemisphere and money. Money has an important function which it shares with writing. It replaces things with signs or tokens, with representations. the very essence of the activity of the left hemisphere. As Seaford points out, money is homogeneous and hence homogenizes its objects and its uses, eroding uniqueness. It is impersonal, unlike talismanic objects, and weakens the need for bonds. Or for trust based on a knowledge of those with whom one is exchanging. It is impersonal, unlike talismanic objects, and weakens the need for bonds. Or for trust based on the knowledge of those with whom one is exchanging. It becomes a universal aim, corrupting even deaf ritual and threatening other values as it transcends and substitutes for them. And it becomes a universal means, including to divine goodwill or to political power. It breeds an unlimited greed. The late development of the polis brings about these changes and leads to the development of coinage. Human dignity and choosing destiny. The return to the historic past, the rediscovery of the classical world, was not a fact-finding mission driven by curiosity or utility. Its importance lay not just in the increase of knowledge in itself, but in the exemplars of wisdom, virtue, and statecraft that it yielded. It was recognized that human dignity lay in our unique capacity to choose our own destiny. Through the models we choose, and the ideals towards which we are drawn, not simply through the blind pursuit of reason wherever it might lead. This involves self-knowledge and the fascination with the unique and different paths taken by different personalities towards their particular goal. Hence, the importance of the recording of individual lives and the rise of both true biography and autobiography. Distinction versus generalization. The drive towards separation and distinction brings individual things into being. By contrast, the drive towards generalization, with its effective democratization of its object, of the holy, of art, of the beautiful, has the effect of destroying its object as a living force. Tradition as embodied wisdom. As Weber saw, modern modern capitalism is anti-traditional. Desperate, like bureaucratization, to do away with the past. Tradition is simply the embodied wisdom of previous generations. It should change as all things subject to the realm of the right hemisphere change, develop and evolve. But it should do so organically. It is not wise to reject it or uproot it altogether and on principle, but to the left hemisphere. Tradition represents a challenge to its brave plan to take control, now in the interests of salvation as it conceives it. unlike history seen as an intellectual realm, a repository of ideas about socio-cultural issues. Tradition is an embodiment of a culture, not an idea of the past, but the past itself embodied. This is no longer available to those who have abandoned the tradition. The problem with rationality. The value of rationality, as well as whatever premises it may start from, has to be intuited. Neither can be derived from rationality itself. All rationality can do is to provide internal consistency once the system is up and running. Deriving deeper premises only further postpones the ultimate question. And leads into an infinite regress. In the end, one is back to an act of intuitive faith governed by reason, nous. Logos represents, as indeed the left hemisphere does, a closed system which cannot reach outside itself to whatever it is that exists apart from itself. Poets, artists, and expressing things in novel ways. For this reason, poets and all makers of language, having the God-given power to tell of what they suffer, fulfill a far higher function than that of giving noble and beautiful expression to their experiences, and thereby making them recognizable to the reader. By reference to his own past experience of this kind. For by creating new forms of expression, the poets soar above the prevailing network of ideas in which our experience is confined, as it were, by ordinary language. They enable the rest of us to see, for the first time in our own experience something which may answer to these new and richer forms of expressions. And by so doing, they actually extend the scope of our possible self-awareness. Childhood represents innocence, not in some moral sense, but in the sense of offering what the phenomenologist thought of as the preconceptual immediacy of experience. The world before the left hemisphere has deadened it to familiarity. It was this authentic presencing of the world in early childhood, a world that romantic poetry aimed to recapture. Categories and overgeneralization. Sorry. The relationship between the left hemisphere and equality is a consequence of its categorical method. Where one is dealing with individual people or things. When one respects the contingencies of the situation in which they find themselves and by which they are modified. When one accepts the things or persons themselves and the context are continually subject to change. No two entities are ever equal in any respect. However, once the items are classified and entered into categories, they become equal, at least from the standpoint of the categorizer. Every member of the category can be substituted by any other member of the category. In that sense, there is an equalizing drive built into the categorizing system. But the categories themselves are nonetheless arranged in a hierarchical taxonomy, which means that while the individual variations of living things are flattened out, the differences between categories become where the inequality resides. Montesquieu's perception anticipates Blake's saying that to generalize is to be an idiot, being itself a generalization. It draws attention in a Gödelian fashion to the truth that every logical system leads to conclusions that cannot be accommodated within it. And there I terminate and say thank you very much and have a very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye for now. So we say thank you very much and bye bye from the museum in Kvarnbyn.